Hi, this is Shweta from ClearTax, and today I will be speaking about TDS under Section 194I on rent payments. The TDS under Section 194I on rent payments covers rent on plant and machinery and rent paid in the case of land or building, including land appertaining thereto. I will be discussing the features of Section 194I, such as the threshold limit for deduction of tax, the rate applicable for deduction of tax, the definition of rent, the due date for remitting TDS, and the TDS returns. First, let us discuss the definition of rent. The definition of rent under Section 194I definition contains a payment made for the use of land or building, any land appertaining to a building, including a factory building. It includes the rent paid for machinery, plant or any type of equipment, and also a rent paid for furniture or fittings. The rent may be paid under a lease, it may be paid under a sublease, it may be paid under a tenancy or any other type of agreement or arrangement. For example, if you pay a rent for your factory under a lease arrangement, the rent is covered under Section 194I. If you as tenant of a factory sublease a portion of the factory to another person, then the sublease is also liable for a TDS. Let us consider an example. For the financial year 2021, Mr. X pays a rent of Rs 40,000 per month for his godown to a real estate company. Under the rental agreement, the monthly rent falls due on 5th of the following month. Mr. X had a turnover from his business of Rs 2 crore in the financial year 2019-20. This is the year preceding the current financial year. In our example, the rent due for the month of April falls due on 5th of May. In such case, Mr. X should deduct tax on 5th of May and he should remit the TDS by 7th of June. In our example, the turnover of Mr. X's business for the previous year, financial year 1920, exceeds Rs 1 crore. Hence, Mr. X is liable to deduct tax. The due date for remitting TDS is 7th of the month following the month in which you credit the rental payment. However, if your rent is due for the month of March, then the due date for remitting the TDS will be 30th of April. We will discuss the threshold limit for rent paid for deduction of tax, and also we will discuss next the TDS rates applicable for deduction of tax. The TDS on rent is applicable on rent paid above 2,40,000 per financial year. This limit was 1,80,000 until the financial year 2018-19. So when you consider your rental payment, you should consider first your liability, whether you are liable to deduct tax, and second, whether your rent paid is exceeding Rs 2,40,000 in the financial year. For the liability to deduct tax, any person is liable to deduct tax except for individual and HUF. An individual or HUF will be liable to deduct only when the turnover or their total sales or gross receipts exceed Rs 1 crore in case of a business and exceed Rs 50 lakh from their profession in the preceding financial year. The TDS rates under Section 194I are: in case of rent of plant and machinery, the TDS rate is 2%. In case of rent of land or building or a furniture or a fitting, the TDS rate is 10%. The TDS rates stand reduced for dues of rent from 14th May 2020 until 31st March 2021. This was a relief which was announced by the government due to COVID-19. The TDS rate is 1.5% in place of 2% and 7.5% in place of 10%. The TDS in case of rental payments made by individual or HUF for their personal use is governed by Section 194(1)(b). In such a case, if the rental payment exceeds 50,000 per month, a TDS of 5% is applicable, and the reduced rate is 3.75% for dues from 14th May 2020 until 31st March 2021. In case the recipient does not furnish a PAN, a higher rate of 20% will be applicable in place of the regular rates under Section 194I. After deduction of tax, the deductor should file quarterly TDS returns in Form 26Q. So we earlier saw that the deductor should remit the tax by 7th of the following month or 30th April in case of dues for the month of March. Now, after doing the payment, after depositing the TDS, the deductor should also file returns. The due dates for filing the quarterly returns are April to June, 31st July, July to September, 31st October, October to December, it's 31st January, and for January to March, it's 31st May. There is an extension given due to COVID-19 for the quarter 1 and quarter 2, where the revised due date is 31st March 2021. After deduction of tax, it is also a duty of the deductor to furnish a certificate, a TDS certificate in Form 16A within 15 days from the end of the quarter. The certificate will enable the recipient of the rental income to claim a credit for the TDS when they file their own income tax return. Note that the recipient is liable to show the rental income as his income from house property or business or profession as the case may be, and also claim a credit of the TDS when they file their income tax return. Lastly, certain key points to remember in case of TDS under Section 194I. There is no TDS on refundable rental deposit collected by the landlord. In case of a rent which is credited quarterly under the rental agreement, your TDS also becomes due quarterly. The deduction should be done in the month which follows the quarterly credit of the rent. In case of individuals and HF, as we discussed earlier, any rent paid for personal use where the rent exceeds Rs 50,000 per month, there is a liability to deduct TDS under Section 194(1)(b). In case the deductor defaults in deducting the tax, then there are interest charges of 1% per month from the date when the tax was deductible to the date when the tax is deducted. And in case after deduction the deductor fails to deposit the tax within the due date, that is we discussed as 7th of the following month or 30th April, the failure to deposit the tax, there is another interest charge of 1.5% per month from the date when the tax was deducted to the date when the tax is deposited. The deductor should deposit the tax in Challan number 281. The Challan is available for an online payment. For the purpose of making the deposit of the TDS as well as for filing a quarterly TDS return, the deductor should have a TAN, which is a tax deduction account number. A deductor who once becomes liable to deduct a TDS should apply for a tax deduction account number to facilitate the deposit and the quarterly filing of the TDS returns. Do like and do share our video, and do not forget to hit the bell icon for notifications. Thank you.